there's two extremes. Maybe there's people like me who are trying to shame themselves to healthy and fit, coming from this place of resistance. Or there's the people who don't really believe they're worthy, who are unhealthy, overweight, who are making up every excuse in the world of why they should eat this shitty food, but they're also coming from a place of not believing they're worthy because they're not doing the things that they know they should be doing.
Which then becomes like a cycle of self-sabotage, and that rabbit hole continues.
So I believe we really have a self-worth problem that we're dealing with. And there can be two extremes that we go about it. Mine was the extreme type A perfectionist side, but there's this other side, and this is why most people are overweight and obese. That's another form of addiction. My addiction was just more, I'd say, publicly praised with fitness, and it could be academics, whatever it may be, where a lot of people have food and drugs and alcohol. But the root is still the same with everybody, is the place that we're coming from.
Welcome to the Fitness CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms. Here's your host, Bryce Henson.
Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fitness CEO Podcast. And before I tee up today's guest, I want to give you a friendly reminder to give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube, write us an awesome review on iTunes. What the heck, right? That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So now to introduce today's guest, who's a dear friend of mine who I've been wanting to get in this podcast for the last 6 months or so. So very excited for her to be here. And her story is on how to turn your mess into your message. And now she is a world-class and world-renowned expert on gut health, on hormones. She is a graduate from Baylor University in terms of nutrition and dietetics. And she's here today to be able to provide some vision on gut health, on hormones, and how it can help your coaching in your location as we move forward. And so excited to introduce you today, Rachel Sheer. Welcome to the show. Hey, welcome back, friends, to another incredible episode of the Fitness CEO Podcast. And Rachel Sheer, I am very excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Bryce, thank you for having me on. I'm honored.
Oh, well, this has been months in the making, and you are in a class above yourself, extremely smart, talented, beautiful woman, and you have an incredible backstory. And I really want to kind of highlight this episode about the value of turning your mess into your message. And you have an incredible story, aka mess, of like health complications and issues that you battled with, and then ultimately figured the solution out, and now that's your message to the world. So that's a huge takeaway and really a theme of this episode, but walk us through your incredible journey.
Yeah, it's always fun to figure out where to start with my journey, because I've always been super passionate about fitness. Like for me, fitness has always been, my therapy. And I think for most people who make fitness a long-term part of your life, I know fitness has been a long-term part of your life, really we do it not just because of the body, but what it really does for us mentally. And I grew up actually in a pretty dysfunctional home, but dance, gymnastics, athletics for me really was what kept me out of trouble at a very young age. So for me, I got into athletics, and when I went off to college, I wanted to learn a little bit more about nutrition and dietetics, because I actually ate like shit as a kid. I ate McDonald's and stored Halloween candy, and I didn't know anything about nutrition. I grew up in a very neglectful home. So for me, again, nutrition, fitness, I should say, was really what kept me out of trouble. But I went off to college and I started to gain weight. I gained the freshman 15. I started to get into partying, drinking. I joined a sorority. But I started to date a guy actually at the time who was super into weightlifting and bodybuilding.
Well, at Baylor.
At Baylor, yes. Okay. I went to Baylor for nutrition and dietetics.
Because you're from the Midwest, but you moved to Texas, I think, end of high school, and that's when you transitioned to Baylor.
Yes, cool. Correct. Yeah, so I got super into now weightlifting and bodybuilding, and that's where I really was able to rediscover my passion again. And for me, weightlifting again was something that wasn't just about the body. It was about that escape, because for me, I had struggled for most of my life with how I had grown up. So I started to, get into bodybuilding, get super passionate about that, and compete at the national level. And I was really freaking good at it.
How long did this take you from when you fall on your boyfriend for the first time before you're competing internationally?
Honestly, when I do things, I do them to like the extreme. That's one thing about me. I get laser focused and I go all in everything that I do in life.
We talked about offset, which we have a lot of common in the word addiction. So we're going to talk about that later in the episode because we share that in common, but continue on.
Yes. So I got super laser focused in bodybuilding, and I loved what it was doing for me really at the time, because it was able to create this confidence in myself that honestly I didn't have for a lot of my life. I was a very insecure, a shy girl growing up. I'm still very actually introverted here today, getting on sets and doing things like this. People are always so surprised of like, oh my gosh, I don't realize that you're nervous about doing that kind of stuff. But for me, when I was able to get into weightlifting, I was able to really, push myself to the extreme and see what I was really capable of. And I loved it. I loved it so much and what it did for me mentally, physically, and, I looked awesome, at the same time.
And you still do.
So I started to compete in bodybuilding, and I started to win. I was competing back to back for about 3 years straight. And it was probably about now 3 years into competing in bodybuilding where I just continued to push my body further and further and further.
And so like in the healthy level, is that what I'm kind of picking up?
At first, it started off in a healthy way. And that's where I say where most people, I think when we get started in a fitness venture, it starts off for wanting to be confident, wanting to create a level of discipline. And I think that part is what's so amazing about fitness. But where I started to step into was coming from a place of not very healthy mentally and physically for my body. And it started to become a way to really run away from a lot of the mental and emotional things that I was struggling with in my life. We talked a little bit about, before getting on this podcast, about addictions. And, I believe that addictions really at the core are a way for us to run away from certain things in our life, from certain emotional things that we don't ultimately want to face. So for me, I had been running my entire life, because of the way that I was brought up and, a lot of the neglect there as a child and being insecure, very not confident, bullied a lot when I was growing up. So like fitness was that first piece where I was like, holy shit, like I have this confidence in myself and I'm able to do something. But I took it to that extreme and it became that addiction for me where it was no longer about health. It was really at the core about, proving some kind of worthiness to myself. I was hustling for my worthiness in a way. I was trying to shame myself to being healthy and fit. And the reality is we can't shame ourselves to being healthy or fit, and we can't heal a body we don't love. And that's so backwards, right? If we think about health ultimately, because we're trying to be healthy, but yet we're coming from a place of unworthiness. And as a byproduct, yes, I got to 10%, 8% body fat at the time, which is extremely low for a female.
Extremely low for male.
Low for anybody.
Low for a male.
Yeah.
I consider myself a really fit guy. I'm about 10% on average throughout the year, 9%. If you're at 8 to 10% as a woman, that is unbelievable.
Yeah. But even though I looked awesome on stage, like people would look at me and I, from the outside, looked like the epitome of health. Mm-hmm. I was miserable. Mm-hmm. On the inside, I was very empty. And I had anxiety, I had depression. And what started off as a very healthy venture soon grew to be the exact opposite now for me. And here I am, actually after winning a first place trophy, about to become pro in bodybuilding, where I started to get really sick. And I started to battle severe gastrointestinal issues that left me practically bedridden almost for the entire next year.
For a year?
For about a year, yeah.
Holy smokes.
It was not just like a stomach ache, okay, I'm a little bit bloated. I couldn't eat anything anymore without being in debilitating pain. I remember one night lying on the kitchen floor, literally crying my eyes out because I didn't know what I could eat anymore. And I was so malnourished because of how lean I was that I knew that I had to eat, but there was now a fear with food because of what it was really doing to my body. And I didn't have a menstrual cycle. My thyroid plummeted. And I went to the doctors, like most of us would do, like, okay, there's something wrong in my body. I need to get to the root of what's going on here. Like, we usually know when there's something that's off. At least I hope we do to an extent. Totally. And I like to consider myself someone who's very intuitive with my body, probably way more now than I was then. But I'm like, oh my gosh, something is off. Go to the doctor. And they did all of the scans, the MRI, the CT scan, colonoscopy, endoscopy, and I just got slapped with a label of IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome, which in my opinion, I consider a trash can diagnosis, because it's really not a diagnosis at all. It's an accumulation of symptoms. It's saying, hey, you have an irritable bowel. Yes, I know that. We need to figure out why.
What does that mean?
Yeah. And I see this so often in Western medicine is really we diagnose based off of symptom clusters. We say you have depression, you have anxiety, you have IBS, you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I know that's something like your girlfriend, wife has. And it's diagnosed based off of these symptoms, and then we're given a medication to manage these for the rest of our life. And it's managing the symptoms. It's not actually healing the body. So I was given, laxatives. I was given birth control because I had no hormones or a menstrual cycle anymore. I was given an antidepressant. I was given thyroid medication because my thyroid had plummeted.
So just all stuff that's treating the surface, not the root of the issue.
Yeah, like, okay, you have hypothyroid. Here's a thyroid medication. Okay, your hormones are off. Here's birth control. You have depression. Here is an antidepressant. All these Band-Aids without actually getting to the root cause of what was really going on. And here I am now getting worse and worse, getting even more depressed because my whole life, Bryce, at this point had been around fitness since it had been what saved my life as a kid. And now here I am, as a fitness model, bodybuilder, my degree in nutrition and dietetics, it had been all of my life. And I felt literally betrayed by my body at this point in my life. And I didn't really understand what was fully going on. And I'll kind of share in a minute how I got to some of that root there. But that wasn't really quite rock bottom for me yet. I was then eventually sent to a colorectal surgeon because I could no longer use the restroom at all without doing an enema, which I know, not very sexy for a fitness model or a bodybuilder even. And I highly considered, getting that surgery. The solution was just cut out my entire large intestine, so the small intestine to the rectum, and that'll fix all of the motility issues.
And that was the recommendation from one of the surgeons that you connected with?
Yeah, one of the physicians,
Wow.
One of the gastroenterologists sent me to a colorectal because I couldn't use the restroom at all. Laxatives and anything didn't even work for me anymore. And I remember sitting there in the doctor's office and being like, all right, schedule the surgery. Let's just do it. I was at that much of a rock bottom low point in my life. And I know for so many people who are listening, like, you may be at that point of like rock bottom and you're so willing to do whatever you need to do to just get out of this place, and you're desperate. You're willing to just grasp and grab whatever you need to grab. And that's where I was at. Like, I was willing to get my entire large intestine removed, which is kind of important. It's an organ. We need it. It does everything from absorb nutrients, from your food to your hydration. And there was a big possibility I'd be walking around with a bag attached to my stomach, in which I would literally be going to the bathroom from a hole in my stomach into a bag.
Wow.
Although I was at that point of ready to get the surgery, something did come over me in that moment. And I decided, I feel like there's another option. And that's like that knowing. Some people may say it's God. Some people may call it, intuition, the universe, whatever name you want to call it. But I had that knowing that there was another solution. So I remember leaving the doctor's office and I left and I literally became obsessed with learning everything that I could about the gut and the gut microbiome.
You became addicted.
I became addicted. Yeah, I took this addiction that was, maybe positive at a certain point in my life, of fitness and what it was doing that went to the extreme, to now pivoting it to becoming addicted to healing, getting to the root cause of what was going on in my body, because that was the only option I felt like I had. Otherwise, it was getting, my large intestine removed, which was just another Band-Aid, really.
Treating the symptom.
From what was going on. Yeah.
Now, when you started having this kind of transition to, the area of desperation to, I need to go in problem solve mode and figure this out, because if it has to be, it's going to be up to me mentality, taking that addiction mentality and really going after it. But what year was this? And the reason I'm asking this is, like, you're a very young entrepreneur in the grand scheme of things. Have accumulated an incredible amount of success just in even a few short years. So the first portion of the show is going to be just about your journey, and then we're going to transition to the business aspect of it as well, which in the grand scheme of things has not been long. But what year was this? Just so myself and our audience has context.
2016.
Okay. So about a year and a half before you started,
Yeah. 2016 was when I dealt with all of my gut issues.
Okay.
And it was about a year before I created Rachel Scheer Nutrition.
Okay.
Which is the business that I now own here today.
And we're going to get to that as well. But sorry to interject, but continue on as transition to basically like researching and figuring this out.
Yeah, I became obsessed. I became obsessed with healing, figuring out what was going on. And I think that's how so many experts are born, is we have a pain, we have a problem, and we are so determined to heal and to fix it. And we take that information of what we've learned and what we've done for ourselves, and we turn it outward, and we're now able to help other people. And that's how healing really can become full circle. So that's exactly what I did. I became obsessed with learning everything about the gut and the bacteria in our gut and how they're literally connected to everything in our entire body, from our hormones to our thyroid, to our brain, our mental health, to our metabolism, the transit of food throughout our gastrointestinal tract. And I started to do various things with my body, incorporate supplements to help regenerate my gut lining, different kind of...
And sorry to interject, this is all self-taught. So like you're looking at incredible sites on the internet. I mean, curious, like where did you go to basically extrapolate all this information is my biggest question. I'm sure our audience has as well.
Yeah. So I had my background in nutrition and dietetics. So I had an okay base, but trust me, they don't teach you this stuff in school. So a lot of it was very research based, but because I had my degree in nutrition and dietetics, I was able to actually order some functional medicine lab testing. And in the process, I became certified in functional medicine through the Kalish Institute. So a lot of it was research, finding reputable sites. I was working with a gastroenterologist at the time named Dr. Kenneth Brown, who is a world-renowned functional medicine gastroenterologist who focuses on SIBO, something called small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which was a big part of what I found that I had going on in my gut. I had a ton of bacteria overgrowth, which that bacteria overgrowth was slowing down the motility. It was, all of the bacteria was fermenting on the foods that I was eating, producing gas, the bloating, the stomach pain that I was experiencing. And I had a ton of intestinal permeability. This is basically when our gut lining becomes broken down and we start to get food bacteria and toxins that leak into our bloodstream and trigger an immune and inflammatory response. And why this is problematic is because this can actually lead to chronic inflammation throughout the body. Because of the gut and the brain is interconnected. We now actually start to see neuroinflammation. We start to see, these other systems affected too, because the bacteria are playing a role in all of these symptoms. And, I believe all disease begins and ends in the gut. So when the gut is off, that's where we start to see chronic dis-ease. And I like to say dis-ease is dis dis-ease in the body. That's any kind of imbalance that is happening in the body.
Disease is dis-ease.
Dis-ease
Got it.
in the body. And I had dis-ease in my body. My thyroid was low. I had no menstrual cycle anymore. I had bacteria overgrowth in my gut, intestinal permeability. And I was able to pinpoint a lot of this coming from my gut microbiome. And doing a lot of research about the power of our gut microbiome in our overall health, but also how to heal and optimize our overall gut health. So that's really the area that I was able to dive into and became obsessed learning about. Now, I will say, for a lot of people, they pinpoint the root cause still based off of just the bacteria overgrowth or the SIBO or what may be off there, but we still have to ask the question of what caused that to be off in the first place, right?
Going back to the root.
Yeah. And the true root cause was my chronic stress, the physical stress that I was putting on my body. I was trying to shame myself to being healthy and fit.
From a physical perspective, the lifting to an extreme, et cetera.
Yeah, my diet was full of what I call diet foods, where these were macronutrient friendly. I was hitting my protein. I was getting in, the right calories to maintain a tight body composition, but they weren't good for my gut microbiome. It was full of a lot of artificial sweeteners, gums and fillers, things that we find in a lot of pre-workouts and post-workouts and gums and all of these quote unquote diet foods that feed bad bacteria in our gut. And when we talk about stress, right, this can be emotional stress, which I definitely had, combined with physical stress. What happens? We have really high cortisol. Cortisol is something that bodybuilders try to avoid like the hawk because cortisol is catabolic, right? So meaning catabolic is it breaks things down in the body. But we don't think about very often that our gut lining is also a muscle tissue. And it's only one cell layer thick. So when our cortisol is chronically elevated, I'm not talking about short-term acute stress, like you go to the gym, you get in a workout, but when it's chronically elevated from overtraining, from being at a very lean body composition, combine that with some dietary stress, we now start to see where the gut lining becomes broken down because chronically high levels of cortisol. And this is also setting the tone for bacteria overgrowth and things to occur in the body, leading to things like thyroid hormone imbalances, IBS, gut issues, and the whole host of all of these other issues to come about.
You are very smart. I love that. A lot of great context, and kudos to you for just going down this rabbit hole and like taking control of the situation, which is absolutely unbelievable. Now, kind of transitioning, once you figured this out, it was completely overstressed. You were overtaxing your body. Your cortisol levels through the roof. You realized, okay, this is actually the fundamental root issue. What was the solution? And then after we go through that solution that you found on how you basically healed yourself, I want to transition into Rachel Scheer Nutrition as you transition to that. And you're a world-class coach. You are literally one of the world experts, in this. So I'm curious to kind of unveil the onion, if you will, on some, how you've been able to be an incredible coach and, just really what that, unpacking that. But really, what was the solution? How did you heal yourself? And then how did that transition into Rachel Scheer Nutrition?
One of the things about healing the gut is the whole person must heal for the gut to function optimally. And what I mean by that is it's not just nutrition, although that's super important and plays a huge role in our gut health. It's not just, the stress or taking supplements. Probiotics worked, which is a supplement people take for gut health. People like me and a lot of other gastroenterologists would be out of their job, because it's more than just supplements, and it's even more than just diet. I believe it's really the place that we're coming from. It's taking this holistic mind and body approach to healing. So getting to the root cause, it was plural, root causes that I had going on in my life. And the true root cause, Bryce, that I was dealing with was the place that I was coming from. I was coming from this massive place of unworthiness. I had this addiction of trying to prove something to who? Myself. And the fruits were burnout, exhaustion, gut issues. And, we see this so often, I think, in the fitness and the health industry. One, we put health in a box and it says, just go to the gym, lift heavy things, and, eat healthy most of the time. And then why do so many people suffer, right? And there's two extremes. Maybe there's people like me who are trying to shame themselves to healthy and fit, coming from this place of resistance. Or there's the people who don't really believe they're worthy, who are unhealthy, overweight, who are making up every excuse in the world of why they should eat the shitty food, but they're also coming from a place of not believing they're worthy because they're not doing the things that they know they should be doing for themselves.
Which then becomes like a cycle of self-sabotage, and that rabbit hole continues.
So I believe we really have a self-worth problem that we're dealing with. And there can be two extremes that we go about it. Mine was the extreme type A perfectionist side, but there's this other side, and this is why most people are overweight and obese. That's another form of addiction. My addiction was just more, I'd say, publicly praised with fitness, and it could be academics, whatever it may be, where a lot of people have food and drugs and alcohol. But the root is still the same with everybody, is the place that we're coming from. So that's where that healing journey really starts to become. I think it's going from that self-awareness to creating true self-love, to self-confidence, self-trust. And that's a lot of what my journey has evolved to. And that's the long journey. But it's also been, of course, the other root cause is my diet. Like I said, I had a diet full of processed food, artificial sweeteners. So I had to do various elimination diets. I had to remove things that were negatively affecting my gut. And gut healing is very different than gut health. So it was a very therapeutic type healing diet I had to do for a while.
I was going to say, how long was this process before you fully recalibrated your body?
It's hard to say because, there was times where it continued to get better and better. And what I mean by that is my healing probably, for a lot of my gut symptoms, took about the course of a year between diet, stress, kind of some of the mental healing that I was doing. And, it would be, I could go for a few, maybe weeks without any issues, but then I'd have a little relapse, and then it would be a little bit longer. And then I just remember one day getting to a place and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't remember when the last time was that I had gut issues. And I think that's really how healing works. But the long game really is this piece here. And, this is the work that really never ends. And that's the piece of work that I'm so passionate about now, is really helping people step into the best versions of themselves and creating the life, the health, the business, the impact that they want for themselves, but coming from a massive place of worthiness instead of from this place of lack.
Well, you're speaking into my soul, and I would imagine probably many of our audience, but I share many similarities, some differences as well. But from the addiction to the success, the outwardly success, I have many publicly praised addictions, but also I have some not so good addictions. I'm a recovering, alcoholic and drug addict and whatnot. But interestingly enough, when you pull down the golden thread, that's actually what it leads to.
Worth.
And you're speaking into my soul, and I know that this message needs to be, heard. And when I, was kind of hearing you articulate the solution and, getting into the, incredible research that you did and all that, but you also realize there's many root causes, but also it's a big mental aspect as well. Yeah. My first thought, it's interesting kind of bringing it back to what we do at Fit Body Bootcamp is, to train clients, really inspire fitness, change lives is our mission. And we're training them on nutrition and fitness and human movements, et cetera. But, most of it's a mental game.
It's a mental game.
Simple fitness is pretty simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. But it's really that mindset. So we offer a lot of mindset coaching with Fit Body. I would imagine when I'm listening to you, especially knowing how clinical you are, how much research you do for your clients. I know testing is a really big part of that. So there's a huge science component, but also too, and I would have imagined that there would be a mindset element, but because of the nature of your work, I actually am a little surprised in a very positive way on your take on that, which I'm sure has led to a lot of client success and, your success as an incredible fitness entrepreneur, coach, and whatnot. So in any case, a lot to unpack there, but that's really, really powerful. And I thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable, and excited to continue to learn from you.
What's up, my friend? Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the CEO of Fit Body. But what many people don't know is that actually began my journey as a Fit Body franchise owner. Now, being an owner, I wake up every day absolutely doing what I love. I live my passion. I help people transform their lives and have both financial and personal freedom. And it's for these reasons and many more that other owners join the brand and open their own Fit Body locations too. So if you're looking to build a highly profitable business, take charge of your life, and create an impact in your very own community, then opening a Fit Body gym might be a perfect fit for you. Now, to see if a territory is available in your area, as we have very limited spots due to our incredible growth, go ahead and visit our website at fbbcfranchise.com to complete an application. Well, thanks, and back to the show.
Where do we go from here? How does that story kind of transition? And then, your business entrepreneurship journey start? And ultimately you position yourself in becoming a world-class coach, because our audience are interested in business and entrepreneurship and being fitness coaches. So I think there's a lot of lessons that you can share. They're going to be very applicable. I
love that you bring in the mindset part of what you talk about with the fitness component, because to me, the testing and that part, that's easy. Most people know what they should be eating roughly. I had to do some education about artificial sweeteners and things like that. But most people, when we're talking about just general health, know what they should be eating. Most people know that they should be working out. But why do we struggle so much to do it? And for me, the testing is I can identify all this information and I can give somebody the perfect plan and the protocol and say, here, this is what's off. This is the plan and that we need to do in order to get the body back to overall health. But the real game comes in with this piece right here. And that's the piece that always is getting in our way. And I think that's also what's missing so often when it comes to being a great coach is we think it's an information problem. We think it's here, just follow this nutrition plan. It's here's the perfect workout regimen. Well, then why do so many people struggle? And then we judge people and we shame them for not following it. And I think the moment we judge somebody is the moment we actually learn the ability, or the moment we judge somebody is the moment we lose the ability to actually create meaningful change in their life. And part of being a great coach actually is understanding where people are truly coming from. What drives them? What are their pains? What are their pleasures? What are they really wanting to do with their life? And when we can really understand somebody and what drives them, what the meaning is that they're making out of everything, that's where we can really create true and lasting change for someone in their life. And I give the example of, let's just say you're having a really, really hard day and you don't feel like going to work out that day. You can create the meaning of, I can't do this. It's way too hard. And that's one meaning. And where somebody else can create the meaning of, I'm being forced to challenge and grow and step into the best version of myself. So it really comes down to whatever meaning that we're making. And I think that's where being a powerful coach really comes in. It's understanding our clients on a very, very deep level and being able to understand what drives them and being able to help them shape and create new meaning. And coming into that place of empowerment, because that's really ultimately what good leadership is as well, is helping people create a new meaning of what is possible for their life. So that's honestly what I'm most passionate about with my job. Yes, it's all this testing because we do need to identify what is off in the body. It's also giving them maybe a therapeutic healing protocol, getting them to a overall maintenance health protocol, key targeted supplements. But it's really this mindset coaching piece that really allows for all of the pieces to fall together to create overall health.
Yeah.
So after, kind of coming back to your question now, after, I went through all of this, that's when I decided that I needed to create Rachel Scheer Nutrition. And I wanted to help other people heal.
Turning your mess into your message.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to take what I had walked through and turn it into a massive purpose. And I set out to create a global message impact. I wanted to change the world. I felt that just much knowing of what I was doing ultimately with myself that other people needed to have this type of approach. So in 2017, Rachel Scheer Nutrition was born, and I was a one-woman show sitting in an office. Actually, to be honest, it started in a Starbucks. It wasn't even in an office. I was meeting people in a coffee shop, doing consultations in there. Thereafter, I got an actual brick and mortar office for a period of time, doing one-on-one coaching, charging maybe like $200 a session at the time. I was actually drawing people's blood because I got certified in phlebotomy from previously working for a physician. Where he taught me how to do that, spinning people's blood, ordering these lab testing, right? Because now I'm certified in functional medicine and I can order all these labs. But I'd say the biggest thing is I just started. And so many people wait for everything to be perfect. And, imperfect action beats inaction every single day. And I'd say the greatest thing that's allowed me to get where I'm at is when I have the knowing, like within me, I just go and I just move. And that's exactly what I did. I got to the point of my healing and I was like, this is what I want to do. I believe in this. I'm passionate about it. And I just was able to find people who honestly, like I didn't even find them, they found me because I was just speaking about what I had gone through so much. I was so passionate about it that people reached out to me and were like, I want to work with you.
Because you're on mission.
Yeah.
You put the website and the business, but like it's part of who you are. It's the radiance that you exude. It's the vibrancy that you put out into the universe. And people come back to that. People sense that. People are drawn to that. So it's not a big coincidence to me that even though there wasn't a full court marketing press, just your essence, your energy, you being on mission attracted a lot of abundance and a lot of clients that needed your support.
And that's where Rachel Scheer Nutrition was born. It was this one-woman show. Started in a Starbucks. Eventually got a office. I was honestly in like the back of a law firm too, meeting clients in there, drawing their blood. And then it was about right when COVID happened that I decided to invest in working with a business coach. And I said, I have this knowing that I'm ready for that next step and I'm willing to go all in. And I had zero hesitation. I spent $50,000 to invest with a business coach, Bedros Keuillian.
So,
I know you know.
Yes, dear friend of mine, mentor, business partner, one of my best buddies. And he's the technical co-host of the show. He comes on once a month and we have an awesome show, but you guys certainly know him well. He was also my coach for the better part of 10 years and still is, which is incredible. So from that, you invested $50,000, which was probably a large sum of money to you at the time.
I didn't even have $50,000 at the time. Actually, I had saved up as this little registered dietitian, charging $200 an hour, I think maybe 25. And I thought that was like the greatest accomplishment ever at the time. I think I was, 25 or 26. I can't remember exactly when I ended up working with Bedros. And, what's funny is the other 25,000 was like am I allowed to say this, but a COVID stipend.
Okay.
Don't turn me in, please. So I had that knowing again. So literally I only had $25,000 and I made a way to get the other $25,000. I figured out a way because I believed in it that much. And I had that much knowing that I was willing to literally put everything I had on the line. And, 1 year later, I 10x'd my business to making over 7 figures in less than a year.
That is unbelievable. And I was going to do a humble brag for you, but as you roll up in your G-Wagon and we're just connecting offline, being friends with Rachel for, since I think 2019 is when we first met. Yeah. But, showing me your awesome mansion in Texas that you're moving to, pretty serendipitous. So from that perspective, what would you say, and there's a huge learning lesson for our audience as well, and I didn't know this for a long time, or I heard it, but I didn't really believe it in my soul, but Bedros said this to me about 10 years ago in 2012. He's like, Bryce, people who pay attention. Mm-hmm. And whether that's a coaching client of yours, interesting, like at our locations at FitBody, many times the best clients who are just the pleasure to work with are paying the highest premium rates. Mm-hmm. It's when you first open, you have some charter members, an example, and they're tiger kickers and they're paying the less rate. Mm-hmm. People who pay attention. And that also goes from a business concept as well. When you're investing money that you don't have, but also in a belief of yourself that, hey, there's something on the other side, when you pay that investment, you start paying attention. I would imagine that had a huge impact on the action that you took from the coaching provided. So if you could just kind of give us a 30,000 foot view of your experience working with Bedros and just coaching in general, but Bedros is a unicorn, so he's absolutely incredible, and you certainly are as well in your own right. But what's the biggest value that you gleaned from making that investment in a coach? Because I think our audience probably should hear that as well.
I want to touch on that point, though, that you said there about we pay attention to what we pay for, because what I was actually doing in that moment is what I said to myself is I'm willing to bet on myself. I'm willing to put everything on the line and bet on myself. There is no other option. And when you're competing with somebody who has no other option, that's literally putting everything on the line, no plan B, no backup, that person's going to win every single day.
And twice on Sundays.
So I put everything on the line and I bet on myself fully. And as a byproduct, I was able to become the woman that I am now today and to have that kind of belief in myself. But I believed in my message and my impact. It had nothing to do with the money, Bryce. I believe money follows value. I was very impact focused first. I had taken my healing and I wanted to pay that forward and help other people. That's why I'm at where I am today. And I felt like I only needed direction. So that's where I hired Bedros. I had the belief in myself. I had that knowing in myself. But the only thing that was standing in my way from getting to where I ultimately wanted to go was I just needed some direction. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I actually remember sitting on the first call with Bedros before I had signed up with him. He's telling me all of these people who I think were, okay, I worked with this guy and this guy. They were all guys for one. Mm-hmm. And who had... He helped make, $1 million before the age of 30. And I remember this was a little bit of an ego thing in the moment, but, I just was like, I'm going to beat all of them. And I was like, I'm going to make well over 7 figures before I'm 30, and here I am 29 today, and I'm starting my second business now to help other people make greater impact and income doing the exact thing that I do. And it was well worth it, but I bet on myself in that moment. And Bedros gave me the direction. Bedros believed in me, but I had to believe in me first and foremost.
Love that. I heard Alex Hormozi on a podcast recently. If you haven't checked him out, highly encourage you to do so for our audience from a business context. But he talked about in his early career betting or investing in the S&Me 500. Not the S&P, which is your normal stock exchange, but the S&Me, invest in yourself. But of course, it has to come with that belief. It's interesting. It's like looking at a glass window. It reminds me of myself when I linked up with B as well and started the Fit Body Bootcamp brand as a franchise partner and owner first. I had a massive belief in myself. I just needed some guidance. In fact, I told this to B recently, which I haven't shared before. About a year before I met him, living in Orange County, California, very affluent area, I literally drove around one time dropping off letters. I wrote a biography letter, just letting the prospective recipient know that I'm ambitious. I'm not looking for any handouts. I just need some direction. And I'm, young, I'm talented, I'm ambitious, I'm hardworking. And I literally dropped them in mailboxes across the most affluent, neighborhoods in Newport Beach and Newport Coast, looking for that. But the bow that I'm really trying to tie on this is that foundational belief in myself and in yourself just needed some guidance and direction. And I think that's the value of coaching. It's the value of what you do. It's the value of what we do at Fit Body Bootcamp, providing that guidance to our franchise partners. And you see it in all aspects of your life or in successful people's lives. And hats off. That's absolutely incredible. Super, super proud of you and proud to know you.
Thank you. I think that's the belief system that everybody needs to have. And I think when they're stepping into coaching too, and not saying we can't struggle and with that belief system in us, but in entrepreneurship in particular, it's a eat what you kill type world.
Totally.
And you better believe in yourself 100%. And the rest is just direction. Every step of the way. And one other thing about myself is I have the exact same hunger that I do today as I did on day one.
Where do you think it comes from?
That's a good question. I think it's just, for me, it's who I am. I either do something or I don't do it, and kind of looking back at the addictive type personality, I go all in. I go all in everything in my life, and I'm willing to suck as long as it takes to get better. If there's something that I'm not good at, I may not be good at it, but you better be damn sure that I'm going to get good at it. And a prime example is speaking. For me, I'm incredibly introverted. Even still, like getting on podcasts, like I come in a little bit nervous. And I think that's a beautiful example for people who are watching. Like, even look at this podcast. I was a bit nervous at the beginning, and then I'm able to kick it into gear. But you know what? I do it anyway. And I step into the uncomfortability, because if you think you're going to be awesome at something from day one, you better be kidding yourself. Because the first time I did a public speaking thing, I almost had a heart attack, and I had to speak to, I think, my second speaking event, 2,000 people. I memorized everything that I was going to say. I memorized every last word. I had to give a 30-minute long talk, which for me was like the longest time ever. And I memorized literally every word that I was going to say. You imagine the anxiety walking up to that? Whew. Terrifying.
Totally.
And I crushed it and I did it. And now I've been able to evolve as a speaker where, a couple of weeks ago, I was able to get up on stage and just speak from my heart to over, 500 people. And I didn't even know what I was going to talk about when I got up there, and it just came to me. But I sucked so bad at the beginning, and the nerves, and they're still there, but I'm willing to continue to go at it and suck as long as it takes for me to get better. I have that belief again of I will get there. It's just a matter of when. And every time there's been something that somebody's put in my face and been like, I don't believe in you, I don't think you can do it, I'm just like, watch me.
I love that. That mindset's so awesome. It fires me up. And friends, that is the mindset that you need to win. Like, business is war. It will literally break you down, and life will in general, unless you have that mindset that if it has to be, it's up to me and let's go. I'm going to dominate, just need some direction. So speaking my soul, Rachel, I love this. All right. So you've been so gracious with your time. We have a few minutes left before we head to lightning round, but I want to unpack two kind of questions. Back to the fitness and coaching aspect. A lot of our audience are interested and will be fitness coaches and basically run their own brick and mortar gyms, hopefully Fit Body Bootcamp, a shameless plug. But considering your high level of expertise in terms of hormones and gut health and whatnot, very important to know. But for the average coach, your level of education supersedes. And I'll be very transparent. We were talking offline prior. I was really excited at this interview from a friendship perspective, to the value that you were going to add to our audience as well. But I was definitely a little intimidated because your level of knowledge is very superior. What would you say for the average health and fitness coach they need to know about general hormones and then gut health? That's kind of my first coaching question. And then I want to kind of glean some learning lessons from a business perspective over the last few years of when you hired B, because of course you've just amassed an incredible amount of success within 2.5 years time, which is incredible. But I'm sure there was probably some bumps and bruises along the way. So I want to do a little high-level overview of what are the biggest learning lessons and the biggest successes within that business journey. But first, I want to go back to the coaching feedback and recommendation the average fitness and health coach needs to know in terms of, hormones and gut health.
I would even tie in the hormone piece with the gut health side of everything, because as I mentioned earlier, all disease begins and ends in the gut. And I believe optimal health comes from two things, really three things, but main two things from a functional standpoint is optimal gut health and optimal skeletal muscle mass. We know our good friend Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talks a lot on muscle and that being the key to longevity overall. That's why fitness, protein, macronutrients is so important. But our gut is literally what's digesting and breaking down all of our food. So if the gut is off, just like it did for me, it's going to affect every system in the entire body. So there is a couple things that we can do for optimizing our gut health. And I do want to make a distinction. Gut healing is very different from gut health.
Is gut health just the general practice of being healthy, where gut healing is you got in a bad situation?
Therapeutic protocols, very specific, a lot more restrictive, trying to bring the body back to homeostasis. Yeah. Where gut health is building a very healthy and robust microbiome with a lot of diversity. Diversity means the abundance of different types of bacteria that are in our gut. And we know there's an association between greater diversity and overall health. So for the average coach, working on building a very diverse microbiome for our clients is going to improve everything in the body. And it has to be more than just macronutrient and fitness related. And the foods we eat really do matter. When we eat an avocado, we are literally eating the microbiome of an avocado, and that's playing a role in our gut. So 3 things people can focus on with nutrition is going to be insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber is a food source that feeds good bacteria in our gut. These are leafy greens, arugula, spinach. I say be like Hermit the Crab instead of like eat the rainbow, like we always say. Like eat as much leafy greens as possible. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, asparagus, cauliflower. All of these foods have a tremendous amount of insoluble fiber, which feeds good bacteria in our gut. It's a food source. And the bacteria in our gut are then able to create things called short-chain fatty acids. And these short-chain fatty acids are really what's protective to the body and has been shown to play a key role in longevity in overall health. It's what the bacteria produce. So insoluble fiber, making most of the plate, all of the veggies, tons of fiber. Number 2 is going to be probiotics. So we tend to think of probiotics in terms of supplements, but probiotics actually can come from food. So these are fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso. These are foods that have already had the bacteria break down the fibers, like the insoluble fiber. So they're alive and active bacteria. This can help create a very diverse microbiome. And the third is actually the most important, in my opinion. It's something called polyphenols. Not sure if you've heard of that before. Polyphenols are what give fruits and vegetables their bright colors. You may have heard of turmeric before. That's a polyphenol. Curcumin. There's something called resveratrol, quercetin.
I think turmeric, actually, going back to that, is in the wellness shot that your significant other, Erin, put together in the shot as a key ingredient. So I take that daily.
Yeah, they've shown that a diet very much abundant in polyphenols is one of the best things we can do for promoting overall gut health and a very diverse microbiome. We can get that through supplementation. We can also get it through diet. Berries are a great source of it. Dark chocolate, that's one of my favorite.
There you go.
Green tea, matcha. These are great sources of polyphenols, but I do recommend some supplementation too. So that's on the carbohydrate side. I say prebiotics from insoluble fiber, probiotics, and polyphenols, the 3 Ps, are one of the best things we can do for just overall gut health. So most coaches just focusing a bit more on the gut health side. And if someone has gut symptoms, their gut's off. But you can actually have gut issues without having gut issues, meaning other signs of gut imbalances are acne, rosacea, brain fog, anxiety, depression, hormonal imbalances, thyroid issues, actually autoimmune conditions, because when we have that intestinal permeability, right, bacteria, foods, and toxins going into the bloodstream, triggering a systemic full body immune and inflammatory response. That's what triggers an autoimmune reaction sometimes over time. So getting the gut healthy, the rest will follow. I'd say that's the biggest rule for a lot of coaches.
And that's a game changer right there. I think I'm going to watch this episode again just so I have my bases covered. And I would highly encourage our audience as well, because I think that alone will be an incredible framework for overall gut health, hormonal health, and also just natural physical health, which will help then our clients, your clients soon to be, get the better fitness and fat loss result, and also too, positive mindset and just all the benefits that come with fitness. So I appreciate you sharing.
And then on the hormone side, the gut influences our hormones. We actually metabolize estrogen through the gut. So getting our gut in a good place, muscle mass, going back to that, the more muscle we have, the more testosterone we have. The less muscle we have, actually, the more estrogen we have, which we know drives fat stores. That's why guys get those man boobs, who are training very hard and eat a very high carbohydrate diet. So adequate muscle through good protein intake, resistance training, combine that with some therapies for gut health. That can be awesome for just supporting your hormonal balance. But there's other hormones outside of just testosterone, estrogen. There's also insulin. Insulin is our main fat-driving hormone, and getting that in a good place is key. as well, because insulin also is what leads to hormonal imbalances in the body, an increase in estrogen that can drive fat stores for a lot of people. And it can actually decrease our testosterone quite a bit. Now, there's a good insulin response where someone who's training really hard, and we want that, but most of the population has chronically high blood sugar, chronically high insulin, and that insulin is driving fat storage. And that insulin is also leading to visceral fat, which is a metabolically active type of fat in our body. That's the kind of fat that's around our organs that leads to metabolic issues, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and hormonal imbalances. So working on blood sugar control, gut health, resistance training, adequate protein intake, which that will also help with insulin, will also be a very key force for hormonal balance. That's very high level.
That's all good, though. That helps at least give a foundation for our audience to continue to be students of health and nutrition and science, which is really important. But I appreciate you laying that foundation.
I'd say the biggest thing too for coaches to understand is it's not black and white. Health is not just, like I said, go to the gym, lift around heavy things, eat kind of sort of healthy most of the time. It's really this holistic approach. And the more we can take this approach with our clients, get to know your clients, get to know what drives them, get to know what their pains are, really try to understand them, the meaning that they're making out of the changes that they're trying to create in their life, help them try to create new meaning. Take more of an approach of gut focused, more than just macros, go to the gym, lift heavy things. And don't get me wrong, those things are great. They're just a small piece to overall health. And I think that's the biggest message for a lot of coaches is, health is so much more than I think the average fitness industry and health industry puts out there.
Totally. And that's, my friends, why you're on the show today. All right. So on that, thank you for that foundation. The other side of the coin before we transition to lightning round is just over the last, since 2020, when you hired Bedros as your coach. Granted, you had a few years of business, but that's really when you made the decision to hire a business coach is when your business skyrocketed. It's been a short time in the grand scheme of things, right? Which is so impressive. What would you say were some top 2 takeaways, like big learning lessons actually, that our audience can maybe avoid a mistake you made, whether 1 or 2, and then maybe 1 or 2 signs or moments of, complete fulfillment and like something that you're really proud about, like within your business journey for the last few years.
I think there's some that I've touched on. I'd say one of the biggest lessons is, be willing to suck as long as it takes to get better. And that's what it's going to take in entrepreneurship. If you think you're the best right off the gate, you're going to be sadly mistaken. So fail often and fail forward, but just start and don't stop. And I feel like I'm saying a bunch of like quotes, but like seriously, like that's coming from my heart. That's like what I've done. I've started and I haven't stopped. So that's been like a really positive lesson for myself. And that's why now as I'm starting this second business venture, again, I have zeroed out. I have that exact same knowing and I need a little bit of direction. I haven't ran a mastermind before, but I'm like, I have that. One
of the components of it?
Yeah, it's going to be a business mastermind.
Oh, that's awesome.
So making that next step is
coaching, like you're recruiting other coaches so that way you can pour into them and they can do the same thing and replicate.
Yeah, it's actually called the evolution. And it's exactly this, taking your story, taking what you've walked through, turning that into your story, your purpose to make an impact. Because there's so many people, doing fitness and all these different things, but it's your story is why people come to you. Totally. The reason why people come to me is because of my story, because I've been where they've been and I've came out on the other side and I'm a living, breathing example of what they've walked through. And it's helping coaches cultivate that story, cultivate that impact, create the structure for their business of what I've been able to create, which is a little bit more on the logistics side after we have the story, and be able to compound that over time to get the team and everything in place. And that's really how I want to give back to people, is to help them create exactly what now I've created. So it's another way of just kind of paying it forward.
I love that. That is so true and so powerful. A mentor from afar from mine, Russell Brunson, who I'm sure you're well familiar with, talks about, the value of story selling and really sharing your message, sharing your journey. People are attracted for that same reason. And you need to get good at telling your story, especially if you've been through a situation where you've had a mess and now you're turning that to your message, because people will follow you because of your knowledge and your skill set and your ability to help them, your strength, but they'll connect with you for your vulnerability and your ability to share that. So that's something that you have in spades. And interestingly enough, I think only about a year ago, actually, when I sat down with you the first time and talked to you about your story, interesting, like, okay, you look at you, right? You're smart, you're beautiful, you're talented, you're in incredible shape, you're very knowledgeable.
Say more. Just kidding.
And on and on and on. But at the same token, for you to then, at a lunch that we had and like talk about, some of your vulnerabilities, I was blown away and I felt like so much more connected. So I think for our audience, that is so powerful. Like your story is unique to you. It's your superpower. And of course you have to overcome that and be in a better journey to help others in the process. But by you being vulnerable and showcasing that, you really connect people, you draw them into, and you're just a classic example of this.
Yeah, I'd say that's the second lesson is your story. It matters. People need to hear your story because that's exactly how they're going to connect with you. And money follows value every single time. And if you're someone who's an entrepreneur and you're in it for just making money, then you're going to have a lot of struggle along the way and you're probably honestly not going to make it. I give the example of that's like the person who only wants to get fit for the vacation they have coming up. That's the person who only wants to get fit because they just want a six-pack abs. It's not enough of a driving force. You have to have a deeper meaning. It has to be tied with who you are and the purpose that you're on and the impact that you're going to make. And it has to be greater than just you. And I think when we can have that kind of meaning and add that value, money will always follow value. So that's that second lesson that's been positive.
That is so true. And we see this in our franchise at Fit Body Bootcamp. Ironically, it's the franchise partners who come in, maybe aren't overly well funded, maybe don't come from like the pedigree, if you will, of being able to launch a business, but they're just on mission. They're fired up. They're passionate. They want to help others. And people can sense that. People can sense, like we're master sensors, if you're in it for the money or if you're in it for the general care and the irony, and just to really acknowledge you and reinforce your point, the people that are in it because of the genuine care, the biggest irony in all is they're able to help and serve at a higher level. And they also make the most money in our industry, which is just serendipitous.
It's crazy, right?
So
how that works.
It's unbelievable. So just wanted to provide some acknowledgement, at least from my view of running an international franchise, of having experience working with many franchise partners and owners. That is just so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
I'd say a lesson, maybe a negative lesson that now is a positive, right? Because they're only negative if we don't take something from it. But one thing I have struggled with in my business is letting go of the vine. And I feel like with my business, it's been so much a byproduct of me and who I am. I've struggled with letting go a little bit, and that's been an area of leadership I've really had to grow into because it's my baby. It was my first business. It was one-on-one Rachel to now, this huge empire that I've been able to create with teams of dietitian, director of operations, servicing, over 300 people a month with my practice. But it's been there's been a little bit of resistance along the way just because of how much I think care I've had about my business too. So actually in this last year, being able to let go of the vine a little bit, meaning kind of, all right, I'm going to just kind of get people in there and just let them, again, make their mistakes, mess up.
Give them some guidance.
Give them leadership, give them guidance, right? Not just throw them in there, but
allow them to
not kind of
micromanage it.
Yeah, micromanage, because I could definitely get in that place a little bit. So letting go of the vine has allowed my business to really, I think, get into that next level of growth. And it's also been able to now create the freedom that I want for myself, where now I'm able to now take a step back and go create a second business and free up a lot more of my time. But that was something that, I struggled with for the first couple of years, for sure.
That's awesome. I think also an incredible message of making sure you keep the main thing. Make sure you learn, you grow, you build the infrastructure of your business so it's self-supporting and self-maintained. This is what we teach our franchise partners, that have multiple locations, some upwards of 10 locations. Make sure you fortify your first location, your first business, your operations. Once you do, and you can let go of that vine, then you can, increase the amount of, locations you have or other business endeavors. So I love that. Rachel, this has been awesome. I still have a few more minutes with you. If you're up for the lightning round, if you will.
Let's do it.
I think I already probably, the audience and I gained a little bit of your passion, but what would you say is your biggest passion these days and why? Healing
and self-empowerment. I think healing is the first stage, and I think empowerment and helping people realize their potential is the second stage. What I think is so interesting about what I do is there's masculine energy quite a bit. There's that drive. There's I'm running a business and all of it. Like I said, I jump in and I go out, 100 miles an hour when I do it. But there's also that feminine approach of like really understanding somebody, getting to know their why, getting on their level, not judging them, helping them heal and really understand and reshape the meaning of what they want for their life, to be able to step into that place of self-empowerment. So I think they're one of the same, but it's going from that place of healing to really empowerment.
And it's interesting, on this particular show, I've really tapped into that feminist empowerment side because your business, type A driven, definitely also is very exuding as well. What's your zone of genius?
Gut health.
Touche.
Surprise, surprise.
Touche. What's your biggest accomplishment to date from your lens?
I thought about that question since I know you sent it over to me before, and I think it's just the people that I've been able to impact, the domino effect that it's really had, where now other people are wanting to start their own mission and do exactly what I do. So it's just been the domino. It's hard to say one thing. It's been the whole accumulation of it all.
Oh, good. I sent you this other question, but I didn't really articulate it. So it might be different than you thought, which I think is a good thing. But you're in the business of giving incredible coaching advice. What would you say is one of the biggest pieces of advice that you've received that's been a game changer in your life?
I don't know if it's a piece of advice that I got. I know it's something that I've heard quite a bit. But I'd say overall, just the level of your success will never outperform the level of your personal development. That's something that it couldn't be any more true. And I think there's times in my business where I wanted it to be in a certain place, but I wasn't at that place. And even in my leadership, in all these areas, I wanted to be somewhere where I wasn't quite yet, but my level of personal development wasn't where I needed to be yet. Rachel, let's say 2.0, I'll say 1.0 was even before this business, but 2.0, when I created Rachel Scheer Nutrition, I wasn't ready to coach people on business. I wasn't at that place. My personal development wasn't there yet. And it took me really diving more into this level of personal development, working on my confidence, the self-trust, the speaking, really getting in the weeds, making the mistakes to be able to then have the experience to then step into this next level. So I can't reiterate that point more, that personal development really is the greatest piece that we can invest into when it comes to our business.
So true. And I'm a walking testimony to that, and many of successful entrepreneurs that we see in life are as well, which is a perfect segue to my last question about personal development growth, which I actually wasn't going to ask you, but since we talked about it, what is your best or favorite book recommendation that's really impacted you in a positive way? And it could be a book. It also, too, to throw a curveball, it could be a podcast or some source of content, but typically leaders are readers, but love your insight so that way you can share along with our audience.
When COVID happened and I signed up to work with Bedros, and the whole world had shut down, I started reading a book by Dr. Joe Dispenza called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And that's one of the only books that I've read twice, kind of 3 times now, where I took notes on it. I listened to it, the audio book.
And
twice.
Joe Dispenza, I've followed as well. What's the book title one more time? Because I haven't read it.
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Okay.
By Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it is really on that personal development side. It's about, creating the change we want and breaking the habit of how we've been showing up and the old wiring and stepping into the version of ourselves that we ultimately want to. At the core, it's a meditation book, but it really gets to that true root piece of where we're all really struggling from. And that was very transformational just in that period of my life, what I was doing, everything I had going on. And it was really breaking the habit of being myself.
Rachel Scheer, this has been awesome. I was so excited about it, but it's overexceeded my expectations. I'm so grateful for being on the show. Thank you for all these beautiful answers and knowledge and wisdom to our audience that they can take and implement. Before we shoot off, would love our audience to still stay in touch with you. So where can they find you? Maybe a website or social media handles, so that way you can continue to serve.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me come on your show, Bryce. You can find me at rachelsheer.com, and honestly, all of my social media is pretty much the same. It's at Rachel Scheer on Instagram, at Rachel Scheer Nutrition is my practice page on Instagram. And then I have a podcast called Sheer Madness.
Sheer Madness.
Sheer Madness.
Love that. And obviously this will be in the show notes and all that, so you'll be linked away. Rachel, before we shoot, I just want to take the time to acknowledge you. This has been absolutely brilliant. As I mentioned before, exceeded my expectations. And it's incredible on who you are, how you show up, the massive value that you've been able to provide the marketplace and clients, which really, to your point, value and financial success is just a direct correlation to the offer and the value that you offer the world. So I want to acknowledge you for that. And the biggest thing, I want to acknowledge you for being so dang vulnerable, like to go through and like be vulnerable about the intricacies of the mess that you went through, the knowledge that you acquired, and ultimately how you've been able to make that your message is just mind blowing. So for all those reasons and more, I just want to thank you and acknowledge you today, Rachel.
Thank you. All I hope is one person was able to get something out of today. That's my mission.
I think mission accomplished. So
thank you.
Well, friends, I know you got a ton of value. I certainly did. Would love for you to like and subscribe this podcast. Write an awesome review on iTunes. In fact, write your biggest takeaway in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. That way we can continue to grow this show, provide more visibility to Rachel, and ultimately allow us to keep producing this awesome content for you for free. So Rachel, thank you so much again. And friends, we'll see you in the next episode.